A crazy day to end a crazy week in what is a crazy market. And everything's kind of hinging around one idea and around a certain area. So we'll spend most of the time talking about that. But again, if you're new here, what we do is every Friday, we take a big step back in the market, a big deep breath, and figure out what happened, start to plan for what's going to happen for next week. And then for Stats Edge Pro members, I run the systems that I have on the website. You can look at over at statsedgetrading.com. They output a whole bunch of symbols, entry prices, stop loss prices, target prices, and I load them up in the system. So if you're interested in that at all, come on over to statsedgetrading.com. But this is kind of my palate cleanser before I get into that. So I have some idea what's going to potentially happen in the market. Now, what was that one thing that everything's kind of hinging on? And it's this two scenarios as I see it right here in the market. One I have drawn out for you here, and that was just a giant bear flag. We sold off, we bounced, we hit the anchored VWAP from all-time high, and then we just fade it entirely. That was a perfect short. I had a little bit of a short in through here. I wish I could say I held it there, but just a little bit of a short trigger just to get a couple bucks in the pocket. But if this is going to continue lower, right, it's going to break this prior low right here. And if it does, and we close below that by any significant level, likely that was just a bear flag. We had the bear, we bounced and we failed and we had the bear flag. The other idea is that we bounce and we pull back, and if we dig in a higher low, right, even anywhere above this all-time low, but we dig in a higher low, and then we start to push higher, and then we break that VWAP, well, then that was potentially a change in trend. We had a low and then a lower high, and then now we have a higher low and a higher high. And that's just how trends are developed. So we don't know which of those is going to be, obviously. We're just kind of in a wait and see mode. If I go through the other headline indices, you can see they all kind of look the exact same here, where they had, the low, a little bit of a bounce. Some of them, like the Qs, are lower than others. RSP is actually holding on pretty well, just showing that the average large cap stock is doing okay. It's more of the mega caps that are really, really suffering here. So now, we keep going across the board and we see a lot of the same thing. So here we are with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin sold off and then it bounced. Same question we got to ask ourselves. Is this a bounce and then a continuation lower? Or is this a bounce, a sell off, and then we break up higher? And we're still kind of in the wait and see mode. And I talk about this all the time, but there's areas of the market, there's times to be very aggressive and understand that we're in trends and we need to trade those trends. Then there's times to be a little bit more passive and do a little bit more waiting. So again, over at Stats Edge Trading, what we do is we run systems. So we have trend following systems, we have mean reverting systems, we have pullback systems. Right now, the trend following systems are going to be mostly in cash. And then the mean reverting systems are probably going to be starting to pick up the pace and start to uh, make some money, hopefully, when these other systems are in cash. Then whenever the market recovers, we'll redeploy everything and start to trade trends. This feels like more of the time. I've been saying this all year. You can go back on the channel where you want to be buying dips and you want to be selling rips, where you want to have pullbacks and then you want to buy bounces. So, a lot of what we're doing is things like KD, right? So KD was a trade this week in which it gapped down through our trigger price right here. So I was just talking in the room, basically saying, hey, this thing gapped down. There was some short report off the open. So by the time it opened, it was way down here. And then as it looked like it was holding on and not making new lows, kind of in this area, I said, hey, I'm going to pick some up. So I'm in this one around this price, around 30 bucks. And if we end up getting gap up on Monday or some move on Monday, that'll be a pretty decent trade. But you can see it's a 3-day trade. And most of the time, I like to be one that I'm buying relatively strong stocks and carrying them as they go up. We had one trend following signal this week, and that was CPRX. That was a nice breakout. Came back to test. I picked some of this up here on Friday because I missed the initial breakout. And, if you look at this weekly chart, it looks amazing. Right? We're breaking out to new highs. This thing looks fantastic. What we need to do is we need to have these continue, but we know that this might not be the market environment for it. In the market, we've been selling off, and even before then, we've been choppy all year, right? We're at the same price that we were all the way back in August 2024, and there's really been no action one way or the other. So again, I could go through a million charts, but they all kind of look the same. I think really what we're doing is we're focusing for next week, and we're saying one of two scenarios is going to happen. And I'm not a macro economist guy, you guys all know that, but I think those two things are all reliant on whatever happens in this tariff thing that happens on the 2nd, which is Wednesday, I believe. And the market could be shaking people out before that event. It could be trying to scare people for what that is. But at the end of the day, we have this binary event that's happening later next week. I'm looking at a lot of what's happening in this range in the market as just overall noise. And what we need to do is when that event's out of the way and the market has a chance to process that, does this low hold? So I really think, again, I talk all the time about making trading simple. Doesn't mean you're going to be perfectly accurate. It's not what we're going for. All of the stats for all of my systems are published on stats@train.com. None of them are anywhere near perfect, but they make money over the long run. So what we're looking for is if this low holds, then I want to continue to be buying stocks. I want to continue to be playing these buy the dip, sell the rip type trades. If this low breaks after that Wednesday announcement and it looks very bad, well, then we wait for the next bounce and we do this all again, right? And the important thing, I believe, in these markets is to stick with your plan and stay patient. I think the worst thing that traders can do right now is to completely abandon whatever it is that they're doing that end up making them money and jump to a new system just because it's working in this particular moment. You stick with the plan, you stay calm, you know that there's bear markets, there's pullbacks, there's volatile markets, there's slow markets. We apply simple systems over the long run and we end up doing okay. So a very binary event coming up and a very binary point. And that's like 550 on the SPY, you could call it. Makes my analysis very simple. I'm going to look at the chart every day. I'm going to say, are we closing above or below 550? If we're closing above 550, I want to be buying stock. If we're closing below 550, maybe I hold off, and then we all wait to see what happens on Wednesday. So if you guys would like me to cover whatever the outcome is there and what I think it might mean for the market, make sure you're letting me know in the comments. You're sharing this around, all that stuff that YouTubers ask you to do, because it really does help with the algos and the channel and all that stuff. So I appreciate you all for coming by. Everybody, stay calm, get away from the screens, come back nice and refreshed next week for what I think is a very important week.